Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a phenomenon that so many of us experience, but honestly, we rarely talk about it openly. We're going to explore exactly why a simple phone call can trigger such overwhelming dread and, quite frankly, sheer exhaustion for some of us. We often label it as just being bad at talking on the phone, but today we are unpacking the deeper, hidden mechanics behind this anxiety. And as we'll see, it's deeply tied to what we call the good person syndrome.
Think about that very real, intensely physical sensation of panic for a second. Have you ever felt your chest actually tighten the exact moment your phone starts to ring? You see a name pop up or even just an unknown number and suddenly, bam, your heart rate spikes. We are absolutely validating right now that you are definitely not alone in feeling this way. For a lot of people, the phone has slowly morphed from a simple tool of communication into an absolute synonym for distress.
So, the crucial point here is that we need a major paradigm shift. We tend to beat ourselves up, right? We think this anxiety is a personal flaw or some kind of glaring sign of weakness. But actually, it's the exact opposite. This reaction is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. It is quite literally proof of how carefully you have protected yourself by reading the moods of others since you were young. You aren't weak, your emotional radar is just incredibly highly tuned.
Section 1. The real reason phones terrify. Let's look at the invisible threats that our brains are desperately trying to decode every single time we pick up the receiver. Think about normal face-to-face human interaction. We rely so heavily on visual cues, a smile, a nod, a relaxed posture, but on the phone, those visual cues are completely stripped away. And because we can't see the other person's face, our minds just go into overdrive. We start treating the slightest drop in pitch or a slightly stiff voice as a massive red flag. The brain overcompensates, acting like this highly sensitive radar. You might hear the person sigh because they're simply tired from a long day, but your brain instantly interprets it as, oh no, I did something wrong, they're mad at me.
And this creates a massive disconnect during these calls. On the outside, you're maintaining a perfectly calm appearance. You're sounding polite, accommodating, and incredibly professional. But your internal threat level, it is absolutely screaming at a level 100. Your body is basically reacting as if it's in a highly dangerous life-or-death confrontation, all while you're politely discussing weekend plans or work deadlines.
In fact, the anxiety gets so physical that you might even find your body physically bowing and apologizing over the phone. Have you ever caught yourself doing this? Your caller can't even see you. It's known as the phantom apology. It's a subconscious rush to diffuse tension as quickly as possible, and you're preemptively apologizing not because you're actually at fault, but because past experiences have taught you that smoothing things over is much safer than asserting yourself.
Section 2. The never-ending brain debrief.
Now, what's really fascinating and exhausting is what happens after you finally hang up the phone. You think hanging up would bring relief, right? But instead, we fall straight into a brutal rumination loop. We start stacking these anxious thoughts one by one. Was my tone weird? Did I anger them with that awkward pause? Wait, why did they say goodbye so fast? Our brains are frantically searching for minute changes in the caller's attitude to anticipate any lingering danger. It's not necessarily that we're being overly compassionate. Rather, our brain is studying the other person to protect ourselves from a perceived incoming attack.
The core of this exhaustion is pretty simple. The body has hung up, but the mind is still tracked on the line, on high alert. Even though the call ended 20 minutes ago, your brain mistakenly believes the danger hasn't passed. It's keeping your nervous system in a totally elevated state. This is exactly why you can finish a 5-minute phone call and feel incredibly drained, like you just ran a literal marathon, and why you never quite feel rested, even when you're technically supposed to be relaxing.
Section 3. The good person survival strategy. Which brings us to why we act this way in the first place. For highly sensitive individuals, being endlessly kind and accommodating isn't just some cute personality quirk, it is a thick, unconscious armor. This often builds up from childhood environments where expressing true, messy emotions was punished, or where you were made to feel responsible for the bad mood in the room. So what happens? You learn a Scrave's survival strategy. Preemptively act nice to avoid being hurt. Because hey, if you're always the good person, no one can blame you, and you stay safe.
But, as you can guess, this strategy comes at a severe cost. Because you're constantly suppressing your natural reactions, you might feel trapped in a core conflict. You end up having only two emotional modes. You are either at 0, completely suppressing your feelings and enduring absolutely everything with a smile, or you're at 100, just exploding with anger and frustration when it finally becomes too much. You completely lack that middle ground because, well, you were never given a safe space to practice expressing moderate, manageable frustration.
Section 4. Practicing how to reclaim truth. So let's look at actionable ways we can gently start to heal and reclaim our true selves, stepping out of that exhausting binary. The good news? We can break this recovery into really approachable pieces. We don't need to suddenly become super confrontational overnight. Step 1, we start simply by naming a small emotion. Step 2, we realize imperfect responses won't break a relationship. And step 3, we practice setting tiny boundaries, like saying, "I'm a bit busy right now." Let's break down exactly what this looks like in practice.
Finding the shades of gray is absolutely crucial. After a stressful call, instead of pretending you were totally fine at 0 or deciding you're furiously angry at 100, try verbalizing a slight, ambiguous emotion. Just saying out loud or even writing on a piece of paper, "I feel slightly bad right now," or, "that conversation left a tiny bit of a bitter taste." By doing this, you start to build a bridge across that massive gap. You are finally giving yourself permission to have a mild, normal, human reaction.
Next, we have to tackle the relationship anxiety. It is so important to realize that human relationships are not so incredibly fragile that they're going to shatter just because you couldn't meet an expectation perfectly. Even if the person on the other end of the phone really was a little annoyed, remember this: you are not responsible for flawlessly managing their mood. You do not have to carry the entire weight of the interaction on your shoulders. A real relationship can absolutely survive a momentary lack of enthusiasm on your end.
If you are struggling with this, remember that you have spent a lifetime protecting yourself by playing this specific role. Undoing a lifelong survival strategy takes real time, so be incredibly gentle with yourself as you practice these small steps. You don't have to drop the armor all at once. What if, the next time the phone rings, instead of bracing for an invisible threat, you simply allow yourself to be imperfectly human? And it really makes you wonder, if the good person syndrome is secretly hijacking your phone calls, what other areas of your life is it silently controlling right now? Thank you for joining me for this explainer.